Mirasee.
I'm James Lamb, and you're listening to Making It. I run a business called LAM, Look Ahead Marketing, and together I work with online coaches, healers, and heart-centered entrepreneurs, those people with great missions on how to build a business around themselves. My parents, when they raised us, they were all about hard work and sacrifice, and that was what it had to be. And my father was the shining example of that, right? Going in early, coming in late, showing up after dinner. We're from Hong Kong, so we would go to Hong Kong for the summers. My father would stay behind because he couldn't miss that much work. So that was kind of the philosophy that we were brought up with, right? Not only that, but work was difficult and it was hard, and you had to really, it wasn't such a hustle, it was more of a grind. You had to have the endurance to do the things you didn't want to do. And that was one of the big key stipulations in growing up was hard work, sacrifice, and grind. And eventually you will sacrifice enough where you will have made it. Back when I'm the ripe old age of 19 and you graduated from your school and you think, 35, I'll be the senior vice president of whatever, right? And I envision myself in a suit, in a corner office overlooking, probably in banking or something like that, right? During my entrepreneurial career, we had a digital marketing agency. And there was a moment where we weren't doing so well. And I started applying for jobs again. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to apply for jobs again. And all I can say is thank goodness none of them came true. So with very little money coming in, with us doing not a great job, I started getting disillusioned with entrepreneurship. I thought about, oh my God, this is terrible. We have to scrimp and save because that's where we were. And, I couldn't see a way out of this. And so that's when the job market became really, really attractive. Now, I went to work for cystic fibrosis in Australia. It's a not-for-profit. I was the director of marketing there. I did a great job for 4 years before I started my first entrepreneur track, right? But then I thought, I have all this experience as an entrepreneur. I still have the director of marketing experience from cystic fibrosis Australia. Let's go and apply for these not-for-profit jobs. Now, the reality is because I didn't get those jobs, it forced me to come to terms with where I was. I went to the very first, we call it JVology, run by Jay Facette. And it's all talking about online coaches, online healers, online course creators, getting together in a room, talking about sharing the wisdom, talking about like collaborating with each other. And I thought, these people can do it and they can do it really well. And more importantly, they can do it as themselves. And that's where the transition to online coaching really started. It was one of the moments of clarity when I realized all these failures and all these mistakes that I made before, maybe they're not failures, maybe they're not mistakes. Maybe they're a learning experience to package something bigger. And the truth is, I had the digital marketing agency that, was failing and really was going downhill quickly, whether I like to admit it or not. There was a time when I would drive up to Edmonton, which is a 3-hour drive away, and it would be nighttime and I couldn't afford to stay in a hotel and I couldn't afford to do this. And we were losing thousands of dollars to have the privilege of working harder than anybody else. And yes, they were all failures. There's no doubt about it. And we wouldn't be here without those failures. It's the reason why I'm so good at what I do sometimes, because I understand what it feels like to be in that moment when you can't see anything in front of you when you fail. So you could say I've turned the failure into lessons that I repackage and talk to my people about. I have gotten to where I am in many ways through a comedy of errors. And that's the truth. And the funny thing sometimes is for the people who work with me, who pay me thousands of dollars a year, I try to get them to make a comedy of errors. And it sounds absolutely ridiculous. And it's absolutely necessary and true. And you have to move forward through the comedy of errors to find out what you're really good at and what to do. One of the interesting things I find anyways, I work with people who are just, a lot of them have been in the field for a long time and can't monetize. And the very first thing we do is we try to set up a beta course. That's one thing that I do. And one of the big hangups of people is, what if it's not perfect? And the honest to goodness truth is, it's never going to be perfect, right? They say practice makes perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. Practice makes improvement. And that's something that people need to understand is every time you do a course, you sharpen up, you understand what you can do better and how to change the course as necessary. We don't get into that spot of improvement until we practice. And the first practice that you make, you're probably going to fail at. So the fact that I now work with online coaches, online healers, and course creators, the very first time I ran this course in its current rendition, and it's evolved so much so you can't even recognize it, was all about, like, I was trying to do some workshopping around Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand. And it's moved on so much more than that. But unless I had done that first one, I couldn't be doing what I do now. I think making it is a confluence of three different elements. One of them, the easiest one to describe, is the money, right? Is the money. Number two, making it is having a business that works for you so you have the time to do the things that you want to do. Number three, and this is the most important one, is being yourself. Being yourself is so important. And I think it feeds the other two conduits. So the three things are money, time, and being yourself. And every day I get up and I say, what's the best version of James Lamb that can show up here? Where are we taking this? How do we build this? And when I do that, feeds the other two, both time and money. In my opinion, that is the best version of making it. We had to fundamentally change before we made it. Personally, though, we fill our lives with more joy. And I think that's the easiest way to say it. The kids now, instead of going to a public school, which they really didn't like, they now go to a private school, which they love, right? And yes, education is important. Yes, socialization is important. And it fills me with a sense of joy that I can pay for this joy. You know, going to France the other day, I was joining someone on a mastermind. At one point in time, I would have to fly on, we call them Aeroplan points here. I would have to fly on Aeroplan points and I'd have to go economy class in the middle seat to save some money. I went full business class and I paid for the privilege. So I think it has created fundamentally two things in our lives. Number one is it's created more joy. We have a new house where it's massive. There's a big yard. We're surrounded by amazing neighbors. You know, we got our first luxury Mercedes, brand new. And, 400 horsepower could fill you with joy, let me tell you, right? And so those are all material settings. But at the end of it, we ask ourselves, and we now have the capability of having more joy as opposed to simply escaping life. The other thing it's provided us is more space to become ourselves, more space when it comes to both figuratively and literally, right? We no longer have to worry about hustling up every dime to make the mortgage. We no longer have to work all the time at night so that we can absolutely make it because we need this extra $1,000. Like, it's given us the space to be able to be ourselves and to really grow as a family. So it's given us a lot more joy and a lot more space. The Olympics were just on last summer. And during the Olympics, we were watching, our kids are 4 and 6. We were watching springboard diving, when they jump up and then they spring around and then they go into the pool, right? What is the thing that the commentators and judges and crowd are looking for? They're looking for you not to screw up. If you make a mistake, you're definitely out of it. And so we live in this world where mistakes are fatal, so to speak, right? And I think this is one of the biggest fallacies that we must break as an entrepreneur community, especially if you're an online coach, especially if you're an online healer, because people are investing in you. And if you're worried about spending all this time not making mistakes, you are never going to be the most amazing, powerful version of yourself. Now, the interesting thing is, I think that version of you actually changes. Like, I think as time progresses on, you learn to adapt and to embrace different things about yourself that you really love. For example, one of the things that got me here to $1+ million a year in business is being myself and just trying things and finding courageous action, right? Doing these things and shooting first and asking questions later. Essentially, it is. Now, the new thing is James Lamb needs to do that too, and he needs to find systems and structure and build around that. Right? That's the new version of James Lamb, because unless we can fix what needs to be fixed and develop structure around what we built, we can never grow. So I think it keeps up leveling, but the most important thing is just to be yourself. Everywhere you go, everything you record, every time you show up, every networking event, it doesn't matter. Be yourself, because there's only one you and you're the best you've got. I'm James Lamb from Look Ahead Marketing, and you've been listening to Making It. You can find me at lookaheadmarketing.com/freebie. That's lookaheadmarketing.com/FREEBIE.
Making It is part of the Mirasee FM podcast network, which also includes such shows as Course Lab and Just Between Coaches. This episode of Making It was produced by Danny Bermant and Geoff Govertsen. Cynthia Lamb is a supervising producer. Danny Inney is our executive producer. Post-production by Post Office Sound. So you catch the great episodes that are coming up on Making It, go ahead and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. And if you like the show, please leave us a starred review. It's the best way to help us get these ideas to more people. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.